Now that we've all finally seen the text of this law, do you maintain that it's still going to be fair for Hong Kongers to be subjected to this, which include up to life imprisonment in some cases?
Your question is it fair? Well, I'll tell you.
Yes.
This was never meant to be. We're supposed to enact our own national security law back in 2003, and we failed. And for 17 years since then, the government is getting weaker and weaker in dealing with politically sensitive matters. And I think the straw that broke the camel's back was the 9-month-long or 7-month-long protest against the extradition bill after the government has completely withdrawn. And the demands that the protesters are making basically tantamount to a non-starter. So where do we go from there? We continue to let the city plunge into turmoil, or they do something else and straighten out everything. So this is not desirable to me. We should have enacted our own bill, okay? We are getting weaker and weaker, our government, and it's obvious. They couldn't even handle a bill like the extradition bill where most people never even set foot in China, so why would they concern about it? So the way they handle it is the reason why there's such an uproar. So now with the weak local government in dealing with politically sensitive matters, and the Sino-US and West and everything else, trade war, whatever you want to call it, getting more and more severe, everybody can understand why the central government needs to step in. And this is a very, very tough law, if you look at the details. It is tough. As a member of the Hong Kong Macau office said,
I'm sorry, let me just interrupt for a second because Chief Executive Carrie Lam is speaking right now, and we do want to listen in.
係受到香港特別行政區國歌條例所保護嘅。國歌同國旗、國徽一樣，係國家嘅象徵同埋標誌。香港特別行政區作為國家不可分離嘅部分，立法維護國歌嘅尊嚴係特區應有之義。
Let's continue our conversation. You were telling us about this not being the ideal scenario in the way that the security legislation has been enacted in Hong Kong. We take your point, but when it comes to stability, and now we have the U.S. slowly starting to withdraw their special status for Hong Kong, will this cause more problems than solve for the city?
I don't think so. Hong Kong has never been a tech center, all right? So I don't know all these so-called technology transfer, how much it's going to affect us. We are a capital center. You're talking about the peg to the US dollar, unless they do something with the peg, which then, of course, there are rumors. Other than that, of course, then there's rumors saying, well, maybe it's time to peg it to the renminbi. So all in all, in terms of sanctions by the U.S. on Hong Kong, I think it is much less relevant today than 20 years ago. Stability-wise, the central government is telling us just stay out of politics, all right? Build the economy, go through innovation, build up livelihood, build bigger flats for people to live in, get more land, but stay away from politics. We can still criticize the government, but probably on the livelihood issues, on infrastructural projects, how to improve the quality of life. Now, in terms of freedom of speech, that is something that is very much on people's mind. These laws all have a part called instigating and inciting, okay? Instigating and inciting secession, subversion of state power, about terrorist, damaging public properties. Okay, it's not only action. You can basically get into trouble by instigating. So what remains to be seen is what remains to be seen is to what extent do they go to look at instigating? Somebody just shouting on the street or whatever, all right? So most people, their main concern is about this. Other than that, like the liaison office director said, this law will be a sharp sword hanging over a minority of people. For a minority of people, this is very, very tough.
Wait, Michael, but you said it yourself. We really don't know how this law will be implemented, right? And when it comes to the wording, it extends to actions committed by anyone, whether or not they are Hong Kong residents, anywhere in the world, even nonviolent tactics. So is this stronger than what you were expecting?
Yes.
In what ways?
in every way that you just said.
Do you expect it to be implemented to the full extent of what the text says?
No. Let me just repeat what I just said, okay? And
no, because right now we have been talking to people that say that this will just be a deterrent, that it will have a deterrent effect. Is that what you're hoping that this will be, despite the text being this tough?
Yes, you have to give me a chance to respond. I just quoted a Hong Kong Macau office the official saying this law will be a sharp sword hanging over a minority of people. It was meant to be a deterrent, and I believe it is. They wrote it in a way that is not very, very clear what exactly constitutes incitement or instigation, okay? I guess it may not be easy to specify or quantify that, and therefore, the whole thing is a deterrent. My personal judgment is that they are only going after a handful of people. They don't want Hong Kong to become a political center, all right, dealing with all this kind of conflict between mainland and Taiwan and between the central government and the West. That's how I read it.
Right. So how does this possibly sit along the spirit of the basic law, and how does this possibly get implemented and applied and not threaten Hong Kong's judicial independence?
I guess the new declaration is that we still have one country, two systems, but when it comes to politics and politically sensitive matter, okay, we need to think more about one country. If there's anything that is not in that category, it remains two systems. That's the message that I get.
There was meant to be consultation with the Hong Kong government before anything was added to Annex 3. So is that, I mean, is there any consultation going on?
Well, supposedly they've been talking about it, since last October. I'm sure there have been ongoing discussion. It's not been made public. The official one about getting input from various community leaders really only happened within a week, by which time I think basically the key points have been pretty much decided, okay? So, you know, we were originally worrying about whether there would be a death penalty because there are 3 specific cases where the mainland directly controlled bureau in Hong Kong can exercise jurisdiction. And I think you all know that that is the one that is so most worrying to Hong Kong people. Now, if they exercise that, they have to prove that it is beyond our own ability to handle, that would fit into the 3 criteria. So I don't think they're going to use it indiscriminately. I do believe that they're going to use it in very rare occasions, probably about defense, about serious subversion, collusion with Western intelligence or whatever, or maybe having a counterpart in Xinjiang, organizing some uprising or whatnot. These are the serious matters, which they would then take matters in their own hand. But then, if they were tried in China, it would still be up to a maximum of life imprisonment and no death penalty, okay? And, other than that, basically our courts are left to do our own judgment on cases. Of course, there are a lot of minor points that make people feel a little bit how should I say it, uncomfortable. For example, the panel of judges to be appointed by the CE only has a term of 1 year. So what does that mean? Everybody is speculating. And also, instead of the court granting the right to do wiretapping on behalf of these 4 offenses, the CE can give that kind of authority, which is obviously something that we are not very used to. All in all, if you stay away from these 4 crimes, Hong Kong is actually no different at all right? What they are doing is that when it gets to these 4 crimes, secession, subversion, terrorist activities, collusion with external forces, it is actually very tightly sealed and to the point where I think most of us in Hong Kong are not used to. That is my summary. And I'm being very forthcoming.
Right, but there's also, Michael, there's also parts like calling for the stronger management of news agencies, of journalists, as well as NGOs. So what are the implications for human rights organisations, for journalists in Hong Kong? That suggests that freedom of speech is going to come into play as well.
Everyone has to be much more careful than before when they engage in activity or making statements that result in these 4 areas. I don't think I can make it more blunt than this, all right? Other than these 4, for example, you can criticize, I believe, that even as an MPC deputy, I can criticize the Chinese Communist Party for a policy that I believe is not well thought out. But if I were to criticize their standing within the Chinese governance structure and the fact that they are written into the Chinese Constitution, and I were to comment on whether they should be the only party ever in power, then you fall into these 4 categories.
Right. So, Michael, everything that you've said, do you think that would be enough for foreign businesses to feel confident sending their employees and continuing to do business in Hong Kong? Right now, really, the status of Hong Kong as a financial hub has been really cemented on its freedoms.
Can I come back to this again? This law will be a sharp sword hanging over a minority of people. I believe, you're asking me for my opinion, okay? Time will tell. I cannot guarantee.
But given that you cannot guarantee and only time will tell, will that erode the confidence of Hong Kong as a financial hub for all of these businesses? Why then not go to Singapore? Why not go to Japan?
No, I don't think so. If you engage in activities in Hong Kong to try in the area of it being a financial hub, why do you have to talk about Hong Kong being separated? Why do you have to talk about whether the Chinese Communist Party should be the only party in China?
What about some investors that criticize certain Chinese companies? We have seen those activist investors really delve into the finances of some of those Chinese companies. Could that fall into those categories that Beijing has outlined?
I don't think so. It's not about secession. It's not about subversion of state power, okay? It's not about collusion with external forces to endanger national security. I think we're stretching it too wide. Again, just come back to these 4 crimes. They all carry maximum sentence of life. So these are serious, all right? But they're sticking to these 4, all right? And whether or not I think we enacted Article 23 years ago, if things go way out of whack, they're going to be thinking about these too. I still believe it's meant to be a deterrent, all right? But how lenient will they be? It will be up to the eventual enforcement. And we have to think about what the central government really wants one country, 2 system to become. I believe what they want is that when it comes to these 4 areas, you guys better think more about one country. Forget about your 2 system. Everything else, okay? You can still go on dancing, you can still go on horse racing, you can innovate, you can trade, you can do all those things. But just stay away from these 4 areas.